Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to City Hall for our January 10th agenda meeting. If you will recall, perhaps, if you were watching us last week on TV, we had the start of the new year, so we had a little mini election for Vice Mayor, and Kathy Webb was elected Vice Mayor. So that prompts a lot of movement of seats for those of you who are regular City Hall watchers. So Kathy sits here now next to me, and the rest of the board chose lots to see where they would move, where they would sit. So we got a whole new adjustment here. We've got a few people who are not with us today, but and so we'll fill that in probably next Tuesday night, and we'll try and remember where everyone else is. I guess their name tags are up there now, so you can tell. But so we're going to go ahead and go forward with our agenda. We've got some presentations to make. We are so happy to be able to continue to honor some of the accomplishments that are happening in our various schools. The first one is to recognize the 5A Boys Tennis State Championships from Pulaski Academy, and I'd like to call on City Director Gene Fortson to do the honors.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. On October 18th, 2016, at Lakeside High School in Hot Springs, the Pulaski Academy Bruins won the 5A Boys Tennis Team State Championship. This is the second consecutive tennis team state championship, and it's a lucky 13th state championship for the Pulaski Academy boys. The Bruins placed 2 singles players and 1 doubles team in the state championship. Pulaski Academy amassed a total of 17 points on their way to the team championship. The runner-up had only 11 points. 6 members of the team were named to the 2016 Tennis All-State team. These gentlemen are coached by Bill Toppich. Todd Dunn is the assistant coach. Mike Walsh is the head of school. Greg Griffith is the head of the upper school, and Kevin Kelly is the athletic director. And Coach Toppich? How are you, sir?
Thank you.
I'd like to read this plaque that I'm presenting. It says, Mayor Mark Stodola, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate Pulaski Academy 2016 5A Boys Tennis State Champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Congratulations,
Thank you.
Coach. If you would, I'd like for you to get your team members to come up here and introduce themselves, and those who are seniors, tell us where they're going to school next year.
All right. If they know yet, some of them don't know. Team, let's come on up. I want to open it up by saying I do want to thank the city board for taking time out of their busy schedule and busy meeting to honor the teams. I think it's a really classy thing that you do every year in honoring students both for their academic as well as athletic accomplishments. And Pulaski Academy is very grateful for Mayor Stodola and the board members for taking time out to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Start with our seniors. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Robert Kane. I'm a senior, and I've been applying to schools in both California and Florida. I've been accepted into some schools in Florida, like Florida Gulf Coast and Florida International, but I'm waiting to hear back from some schools in California because that's the state that I want to end up in.
Hi, my name is Jack McGreblian, and I'm a senior at Pulaski Academy, and I haven't decided where I'm going to school yet, but I'm still trying to get into schools in California and Florida, like Robert over here, and I've already been accepted to a lot of them, so I'm just waiting to hear back still. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Hunter Harrison, and I just received a scholarship to play tennis at Mississippi State University next fall, so that's where I'll be going.
I'm Jake Bridges, and I'm a junior and do not know where I'll be attending school next year.
Well, hopefully back at PA.
Hi, I'm Tyler Ingtuaco. I'm a sophomore at Pulaski Academy, and Yes, I do not really know where I'm planning on going to college yet, but I'm still looking forward to participate in this great program, and I'm looking forward to all of the great wins that we're hopefully going to achieve in the following years.
I'm Foster Rogers, and I'm a freshman at Pulaski Academy, and I do not know where I'll be going to college. I have a little ways to go.
I might add that 6 members of this team were named to the 2016 Tennis All-State Team. That is the most that any one school can have in this designation. They are Tyler Anglichaco, Jake Bridges, Robert Kane, Hunter Harrison, Jack Meglin, and Foster Rogers. Also, there's an individual member on this team who captured the state championship. Senior Hunter Harrison, who is a 3-time All-State selection, captured the Class 5A state singles title. On the way, he won every set he played. In fact, he did not drop a single game in the first 2 rounds of the state tournament. After capturing the 5A championship, he came back 2 weeks later and won the boys' overall state tennis singles championship for the 2nd consecutive year. Again, he won every set in that championship tournament. In addition to being a 3-time All-State selection, Hunter was named Wendy's Arkansas Tennis Player of the Year for 2016 and 2017. I'd like to read this plaque that you can take with you to Starkville. So, Mayor Mark Stodola, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate Hunter Harrison, the 2016 Boys Singles Overall Tennis State Champion and 5A Boys Singles Tennis Champion. In his quest for the championship, he exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Congratulations, Hunter. Appreciate it.
I think we maybe have some parents out here that are pretty proud of these boys as well. Would you like to stand and be recognized, please, collectively? Thank you for all you've done to help your sons along their way and to becoming wonderful representatives of our city. So good luck to all of you. And for those of you who are not graduating, I hope you're going to be back playing tennis next year at PA. Okay. The next presentation that we have is one that I know our city manager and the parks staff are very, very proud of. Let me call on Bruce Moore for a presentation dealing with the reaccreditation of our Parks and Recreation Department.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. As you know, my challenge are departments that have accreditation agencies and processes to initiate the process, go through, and become accredited. And we're very excited to have 3 of our departments that are accredited, and I feel very confident we have a 4th one that we'll be adding this year. But at this time, I'd like to call on our Parks and Recreation Director, Truman Tolfree, to come forward. Truman?
Thank you very much, Bruce. I've got just a few comments that I need to make. Let's see if I can get these 7, 8 pages here done. Okay. I'm only kidding, okay? But again, thank you so much, Bruce, to Mayor Mark Stodola, to Vice Mayor Kathy Webb, and to other members of the board. It is indeed a great privilege for me to stand here and let you know that Little Rock Parks and Recreation has been accredited for its 4th time. So I think that is indeed a great feat, and we're very happy about that. Accreditation is the highest form of recognition that a Parks and Recreation agency can receive from the National Recreation and Parks Association. To be accredited, accreditation is a distinguished mark of excellence that affords external recognition of an organization's commitment to quality, improvement, and best-in-class practices. Each accreditation is for a 5-year period, which means that our next accreditation will come in 2021. Accreditation requires that an agency responds to 151 national standards. Now, reaccreditation requires that an agency complies with 108 or 95% of the 114 non-fundamental standards and 100% of the 37 fundamental standards. I'm happy to report that at this time that Little Rock Parks and Recreation complied and met all 151 standards. This is a feat that is rarely ever accomplished. And so to be able to do that 100%, it in fact had to be a total team effort. And at this time, as I said, we are very happy. We have all the members of our staff, and I'm going to turn back over to the hands of our city manager, Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Truman. And just to put this in perspective, I actually went to the ceremony, and it's called the Best of the Best. And the first category that they presented were newly accredited parks agencies. And just included on that list, or this list, was Baltimore City Parks and Recreation, Tulsa Parks and Recreation, and Dallas Parks and Recreation Departments. So these were departments this was their initial accreditation process. Under the reaccredited agency, and this is something I was very proud of, and Truman mentioned, but under the reaccredited agencies, the City of Little Rock Parks and Recreation was #1. And that just says a lot for our department. So I would like to ask all of our members of our park staff that are here today to stand up. And it is truly my honor. This is for you all. Thank you for doing a great job on behalf of the citizens of our city. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bruce and Truman, and park staff, thank you. You make the two of them and all of us look really good, okay? And we appreciate that. You're doing a great job. Just continue the work.
Thank you.
Okay, we can now move on to our modification page. We've got several resolutions that are being asked to be added. I guess resolutions 1 through 8, M1 through 8, and then we also have an ordinance to be added, 2 ordinances to be added. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second to add these to the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We'll see whether we can group these resolutions in our consent agenda, and likewise perhaps group these ordinances once we get to them. All right, so if you will, take a look at all of these modifications, and let's go through these first, and let me ask you if you have any questions. Director Hancock, do you have a question?
I just want to make a motion to add these to the consent agenda,
Okay, we've just done that.
to add them to the consent.
Oh, to the consent agenda. Well, let me let everybody have a chance to look through them quickly.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Director Wright.
Am I on? Yes. Mr. Moore, M9, would you give a explanation and a description, please?
Mayor and members of the board, we're very excited about this partnership that we have with the Little Rock School District and the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And at this point, let me ask our Chief Service Officer, Mr. Drake, to come forward.
Mayor, good evening. Members of the board, good evening. I'm Michael Drake, the Chief Service Officer. I'll be glad to elaborate on that, Director Wright. Since June of last year, we've been negotiating with the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and the Little Rock School District with Superintendent Mike Poor's participation in a way to bring student interns from the College of Education, Health Professions, and Rehabilitation Services into our Love Your School partner schools, the 8 schools that we serve, and the almost 4,000 students, all K-5 students that we serve, to provide Love Your School support services. In the past, we've used AmeriCorps members to great success, but we've run out of the 5-year commitment that AmeriCorps makes to organizations such as us. We've timed out in using AmeriCorps, in other words. So in looking for opportunities and alternatives to serve the students that we provide services to in our obesity intervention, we looked at volunteers, we looked at part-time employees, we looked at the opportunity to bring in substitute teachers, and all the principals we work with gathered and advised us not to do any of those anymore, but to look at partnering with the University of Arkansas at Little Rock to bring education students, excuse me, and health profession students into the schools that provide the services, the health services that we provide. So we're looking at this as an opportunity to expand on a program that we've been working on since June to bring up to 36 student interns into our 8 partner schools over the coming year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. This is a great program. We've been working on childhood obesity now for, I think, 5-6 years now.
Since 2011.
And the ability to partner with the university and have those education and health profession graduates or soon-to-be graduates in the schools is really, I think, going to be a great marriage. And it's an important one to talk about in terms of partnership, not just the city reaching out and actually providing actual clinical work in the schools with our partnership and with the university and with the school district itself. So sometimes that doesn't get on the front page, but the city of Little Rock reaches out to the schools in many, many ways, and this is one of the great ways we do it. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions on the modification? Director Adcock made a motion. Is there a second to add M1 through M8 to the consent agenda? There's a second? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, we'll add those to the consent agenda, and now we can, we'll look at these ordinances. If there's no objection, let's see if we can group these 2 ordinances with our other ordinances as well. There's a motion. Is there a second to that? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, good. We can now move on to the consent agenda. I see, Director Wright, did you have a question on the main consent agenda? All right, go ahead, please.
Resolution number 2, I'd like to know what the request is for. I don't have my tablet anymore.
Director Wright, as you can see, this is only to set the date of the agenda, so we wouldn't have anything on the tablet. But just to tell you what it is, they want to put up a storage building behind the Cracker Barrel there at Shackleford Crossing.
Ew. Okay. Is there any recommendation from staff on this?
You'll see that in 2 weeks when we.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, on item number 4, this is the transfer of the title of the 80-something lots or 80 lots in the Rolling Pine subdivision. I just want to make sure, I got a phone call and was told that this offer was out there and that we were going to accept it. I just want to make sure that we're following the Bill of Assurance plan that I've encouraged us to do for these number of times, and that it is single-family housing and that it is not duplexes or apartments, and that they'll follow all the bylaws that are set out in the Bill of Assurance.
That's correct. Let me ask Doug Tapp, our land bank administrator, to come forward. But that was all of the things that we had talked about before included. Doug?
That's correct, Mayor, City Board. Yes, ma'am. In the contract, I did include an acknowledgement of the amendment to Bill of Assurance that City Manager Moore signed in 2015, and that details what can and can't be built going forward.
Okay.
Single family only
Is the
properties.
bill of assurance detailed enough where it specs in the size homes that are supposed to be there and the description of the homes, like brick, frame, et cetera?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, and it's my understanding that we resurveyed the lots and made the lots bigger to conform with the original
Yes, ma'am.
plot plan that was done years ago.
That's correct.
Okay, so they are larger lots.
They average 12 to 20,000 square feet. Normal city lots are about 7.
Yeah, okay. And when we last talked, I'd ask you about, is it Rolling Pines Drive, the main entrance into that subdivision? When we went through the charrette a number of years ago, the neighborhood never wanted that road extended. Is there anything in the bill of assurance that reflects, or in the plot plan, that that road is not to be extended? I think that's where you and I left conversation when we talked a couple of weeks ago.
I don't see anything in the bill of assurance that states specifically that road would not be extended.
Okay, and in the subdivision plat, does it show it to be extended to Hinkie Road?
Let me look. Well, the plat map that I'm looking at's not large enough to
Okay.
to actually show that.
Okay, maybe we can find that out.
Yes, ma'am.
To see about that, because when we did the charrette a number of years ago, that was something that neighborhood really wanted not to happen, was the extension
I can speak with,
to Hinkie Road.
I can get with the city attorney's office and we can try to get something drawn up that includes that in the contract because that hasn't been signed yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What are we, how much are we selling these lots for?
Well, he made an offer, there's 80 lots. He made an offer for $160,000.
For the 80 lots?
Yes, sir.
And is he paying any of the, you mentioned the real estate taxes that we paid as well as the plat fee. Is that being paid as well?
Well, real estate taxes are current. He's going to pay his closing costs and the city's going to pay their closing
I
costs.
see.
Does that money go back into the land bank?
I sure hope it does, but that's kind of out of my hands. I'm going to try to keep it there.
Mr. Moore's
So that we
not
can do more
answering
good.
that, so.
It does. That's
Okay.
the agreement.
What, is there a schedule of development? I mean, is that part of the contract? In other words, are we,
There's
you
no
know, I know
schedule.
this thing has laid fallow for years and years, and then now we got the size of the lots a little bit better, but there's been several ideas about how to move this forward.
He has stated an intent over the next 2 years and the next 15, but there's
There's
nothing.
no requirement in the contract for him to build one single house?
Not as of yet, no, sir. We can discuss that, and his offer was contingent upon, I believe, well, he stated he was going to build 10 in the next 2 years, 10 to 15.
Was there any reason why that shouldn't be in the contract?
I can discuss that. I mean, if when the Land Bank Commission discussed this and approved it, they did not care whether or not he built the house. They approved the sale, and, you know, if he builds now or he builds in 10 years, it's an investment for him.
Well, when I was involved in the conversation, I was told that he was going to build 10 lots within the next 10 houses within the next 2 years. So my assumption that that's in the contract in some form. So I'll need to look at
We
that.
can amend.
Why don't we
amend
hold
it
this
to-
separately then, if there's no objection? And we'll see if we can get those questions answered between now and then. Okay, Director Adcock, did you have a question on this?
Thought we was going to build 10 houses the first 2 years, and then an additional 10, I think, in the next 15 years.
Well, I think if we can put that in the contract, that'd be great. I mean, that's my concern. Yeah.
We can do that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Adcock, did you have anything else? Director Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 6.
You have a question?
Yes, how many classes do Little Rock
Two.
currently offer us?
2.
So we're increasing due to,
No, this is our annual contract, so they will continue to do 2 classes.
oh, so this is not anything in addition to what we've always done?
Correct. We always have done 2, and this will allow us to continue to do 2 classes.
Okay, I guess I must have read it wrong, because I thought we were going to add 2 more classes. I thought we were turning out business people. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, with the exception of Resolution 4, we'll go ahead and leave all of those on the consent agenda. And now we can move on to the grouped items, items 9 through 19. And let me ask if there are any questions on any of these items. Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm a little bit concerned about the change in the land use map, and I can't tell you which maps it was on. I looked at several of them, but particularly along Alexander Road, changing the designation to STD, and there are residences along there. There's only one business that's been there for probably 20 or 25 years, and it's a HVAC business. I understand there's a lot of industrial property that, excuse me, abuts these homes, but you're basically turning a great deal of Mableville, Arkansas into industrial and STD type zoning. And there are still single-family residences in that area, and this is changing the whole complexion of how this area will look in the future. And I'd like to understand why we've made that decision to do that. I think you'll see it on several of the zoning plans.
Sure. Let me ask Mr. Brzezinski to come forward, Tony.
Director Wyrick, Mayor, Vice Mayor, congratulations. Welcome, Director Peck, and Happy New Year to all of you. You know, gotta have some feel good up here. Just real
You're not starting the
quickly,
year out good with me, Tony, I'll just tell you.
just real quickly, for most of you, this is our ongoing process, and this is new for Director Peck. We started reviewing the citywide land use plan about 2009, 2010. We started on the east side of the city and then gradually moved westward. And so every 3 to 5 years, we go back to an area. And the areas are fairly large. If Mr. Carter or Mr. Malone can show the graphic that has the overall area that we're reviewing. And you can see this is primarily an area, it is an area west of I-530 and south of Interstate 30 down to the county line, or the city limits. And there was a number of areas that we reviewed and proposed changes. Some of those changes were pulled because the property owner did not feel comfortable with the change, and these are the remaining ones. Director Wyrick, I think the one you're referring to is on the north side of Alexander between the South Loop and Sardis Road. Currently, a portion of that property, as you can see, is zoned I-1, a light industrial district, and it's called Industrial Park. And then another portion is zoned I-2, and then the eastern third is zoned C3. And currently, so it has non-residential zoning. Currently, the plan does show it for commercial, and that commercial goes from the South Loop to Sardis. We felt that because of the zoning and to try to avoid a strip commercial pattern along an arterial, that's why we suggested the Service Trade District, STD, and the package was presented to the Planning Commission. Mr. Malone made a presentation at the Planning Commission. There was no public comment, and the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval of the package that's before you.
So all of the people in this particular area that has the hash marks on it, or whatever it is, those marks, they have agreed to change to STD for future zoning?
Yes, they did not object to the change.
Okay.
And it's not zoning. The zoning will not change with this. It's just the land use designation.
Yes, I understand that. When we went to the Planning Commission, did we notify the neighborhood associations in the area that this was coming up? Do we do that on a land use change?
Yes, the process is very transparent. There were Allendale, Alexander Road, Chico, Cloverdale, Deer Meadow, Legion Hut, Santa Monica, Mavis Circle, our neighborhood association, Oxford Valley, Pinedale, and Upper Baseline, West Baseline, a large number in this area that we have identified on our contact list were notified.
What about Meyer Lane, that neighborhood association? Because the rest of those people don't even travel in this area.
I don't see Meyer Lane on the list of neighborhoods, and I don't know if we have them listed or if they're registered with the city.
They were registered at one time. Did you notify residences within 200 feet of this? Do you do that in this type of change?
No, just the property owner.
Just the property owners? Okay, well, I submit to you, there's a lot of residences. You can see the homes that are there, and the homes down Meyer Lane are substantial homes, and I don't see how you can do this type of zoning on one side of the street and then continue to have residential on the other side of the street. I mean, I understand a street's a demarc, but those are going to be in front of people's homes. You got to drive by them. This has been industrial property for a long time. Everybody's used to it being a pretty valley until FedEx came in. But I'm just thinking that maybe you ought to leave it as commercial or, that type of thing rather than go to that. Because tell me what's in an STD.
The definition of STD is
I'm thinking it's more manufacturing type businesses.
it allows for a mix of office, warehousing, or industrial park activities that primarily serve other office services or industrial businesses. And then a planned development would be required if it's anything other than 100% office. I mean, as we've done in the past, Director Wyrick, if you are concerned about this, and Mr. Moore is all right, we can pull this one.
I would like to do that, but I also would like to get a weigh-in from the residents in that area to see what they would like to see what their thoughts are. I know one time the city contacted me about changing the land use plan at Alexander and Meyer Lane, and I had 25 neighbors down here, and they were not happy about that, and it was changing it to commercial. So I just don't believe that neighborhood would be very happy with this. So if we can pull that and, have a meeting, get some input from the community, at least advise them that this is what the future zoning's going to be, or potentially could be. Can you do any commercial type under STD?
Well, again, it depends on if the property is already zoned, which some of this property has non-residential zoning. Some of it does have commercial zoning. So you could do whatever's allowed in those districts. Now, the I-1 district is a site plan review district. So, but if it's not zoned, and if they're not doing a 100% office development, then it has to come through as a planned development.
Okay, on the same plan, down west of here, there's a change in land use for, I think it's going to PI at the corner of Vimy Ridge and Alexander,
Yes.
or is it going to industrial?
No, it's going to
going to
public
PI.
and institutional.
What is the rationale for doing that?
It's a utility, a public utility, and it's just, as you can see from the map in front of you, some of that area to the south and adjacent to the east is already designated as PI. It's part of that substation.
Okay, okay. And then while you're up there, can you discuss a little bit about ordinance number 10, which is still west on Alexander Road, where we actually get into the town of Alexander?
Yes, Director Wyrick, what this is a request to amend the master street plan to reclassify what is called, it's 4th Street, which is, I mean, it's in the city limits, but it's 4th Street in Alexander. It's in the city limits of Little Rock, but it was designated 4th Street as part of the original plat for the town of Alexander. Currently, the master street plan shows that extension as a minor arterial. The request before you, and again, staff supports it and the Planning Commission recommended approval, is to reclassify this to a collector street and not the minor arterial, we feel. And this was generated through a plat for the property that would be to the southeast of 4th Street. There are approximately a total of 56 lots. 44 of those are within the city limits of Little Rock, and then the remaining 15 are in Saline County, which is that area south of that bold line. And again, it's just to reclassify this section to a collector.
Where are the lots at? You said southeast. Are they?
Mr. Malone, can you point out the area? It's right in there.
Okay. So is it a new plat?
The plat was just approved by the Planning Commission at the end of last year, yes.
Okay. All right. Now, Alexander Road, is it a collector or is it a minor arterial?
It's a minor arterial.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if we can back up to ordinance number 9, Director Wyrick has expressed some concerns or some issues on one of the elements there for a change in the land use plan. Mr. Moore, Bruce, do you want to hold this ordinance? Do you want to keep it separate? Do you want to
What we'll do
eliminate
is,
this one and go
Yeah.
forward with the rest?
yes, we'll amend it to take that item out and then have the meeting with the Meyer Lane neighborhood and see where we want to go from there. But that, yeah, that's what we'll do.
Okay, so between today and next
Friday.
Tuesday, that will be eliminated, and you'll note that on the correspondence to us. Director Adcock, do you have further questions on the land use plan? Go ahead, please.
Mr. Moore, also beside Meyer Lane, you got Old Orchard that is close to that out there.
We'll work with Director Wyrick to make sure we get all the right neighbors there.
Okay, because those neighborhood associations that you named, or Tony named, those are all back in Guyer Springs area and everything. These out here, Myers Lane, and there was another one, Alexander Road Neighborhood Association, that we had a few years ago, that should still be on the thing with the presidents listed. Also, on here, Tony, it says that one of these is on Arch Street. I didn't think we ever did anything at Arch Street Pike. So are we going to start looking out there? Or why we even, do we have this on here, and who was notified out Arch Street?
Can you put the overall zoning map up again, Scott, and then maybe we can point out which area we're talking about?
Director Adcock, that is an area that we have planning jurisdiction, but we don't have any zoning out there. If you recall, we tried a number of years ago and it
The
failed.
only thing I remember is English Acres out there that we did years and years ago. But I've never remembered us doing anything on extraterritorial zoning on Arch Street Pike. Because it has lots of problems out there with zoning. And so
Again-
why are we looking at it now when we've never done it?
Well, I think it's the land use plan that we're making recommendations on, not zoning.
Right, there's no zoning out in this area. It's just a land use plan and it's designating what
Is
we.
this the first step to us starting to look at extraterritorial out that way?
No, because again, the land use plan is in place out here, and the areas are not classified, but shown for different types of uses or recommended uses. So in this case, the plan shows it for, along this section of Arch Street Pike for residential low density, but it's primarily non-residential, so we're recommending mixed use.
Walter, can you, or Scott, can we put up the smaller map on that issue, please?
Who did you talk to out Arch Street Pike on this?
Director Adcock, we contacted the property owners.
And just property owners?
Yes. And again, the land use plan is already in place out here and has been.
Do you see us doing any extraterritorial out in that area?
Not in the foreseeable future.
Is the only place we're doing extraterritorial is out Highway 10 and then out Lawson Road?
Yes, primarily to the west, northwest, and out baseline. But also, if you recall, we did extend zoning to the College Station community, that part that's outside of the city of Little Rock. That was done a number of years ago, but only right in that little pocket.
How long has it been since we did any extraterritorial out that way?
I guess the last one was College Station, and I'm not, it's been a number of years ago now.
Okay, I just don't want to send lots of fear into these people outside the city limits of Little Rock that we're looking at their areas. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and leave it grouped, and unless there's a reason for someone that wants to have it held separately. With that, with the note that Bruce is going to make that change. Okay, if you'll continue to look at the next page, then ordinances 10 through 13. Any questions there? Director Wright, did you have a question?
On 14.
All right, we can look at ordinance 14. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like staff to give a presentation. I want to see what's around this site.
Mr. Brzezinski.
I keep looking for you. Director Wright, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Item 14 is property located at 13,423 Canis Road, which, as you can see, is on the south side of Canis, just west of White Road, which runs south off of Canis. The property in question, it's part of a larger planned office development that was approved several years ago. And what's being proposed here is to revise the planned development to allow O3 general office uses and also an office with some warehouse space. What's being proposed is a 8,800 square foot building. If we could go to the site plan. As you can see, 8,800 square feet with parking in the front and in the rear. The primary user will be this contractor, which again with some storage space in the rear of the building, and then he'll be taking up one of the bays in the front, and then the other ones will be available for O3 general office uses.
Did we get any input from the housing development that's looks like it's right next door?
Taylor Park. I think staff indicated that they did get some calls, but this item at the Planning Commission meeting was on the consent agenda. There were no public comments, and the commission voted 9 ayes and 0 noes to recommend approval.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens between now and next week. I have not heard from them, and usually the Canis Road people are very vocal. So we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, any other items on that page, 15, 16, or 17? Any questions? Okay, if we can, let's turn to the next page and look at ordinances number 18 and 19. And if there's, Director Wright, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I wanted an understanding of number 18. It says Little Rock Port Authority, College Station Sports Complex.
Director Wright, this is an item that, if you remember, late last year, we sold some port property to the county for the development of this baseball complex out at College Station. So this just allows it to rezone that property for the baseball field.
Must have been absent. I don't recall that.
Oh, you commented that Brian Day was here and you were glad to see him. So
I don't recall that. He's been here numerous times. Okay. So the county is doing this.
Correct.
Pulaski. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, Director Hancock, you're recognized, please.
Yes, I'd like a presentation on 19, please.
Item 19.
Mr. Brzezinski. Tom, you didn't do the transportation code.
Director Adcock, Mayor, Vice Mayor, board members, item 19 is property located on the north side of Lawson Road. This is outside of the city limits. You can see right on the edge there, the city limits. And that's basically at the split with Colonel Glenn. And this is but within our zoning jurisdiction. It's currently zoned R2. This property was developed in the early 1980s as a non-residential use. It was initially an electrical contractor, and the current user it's had non-conforming status since we zoned this area. The current user has been in place for about 5 or 6 years from 2011, and the property's it was in foreclosure. This user's buying it from the bank, and they would just like to eliminate the issue of being non-conforming, so the request is to rezone it to a planned development commercial to recognize this particular use.
Has it been empty long enough for it to lose its non-conforming?
No.
And what do they plan to use it for? Because it's right there in the middle of lots of residential.
And again, the future purchaser of this property has been on site since 2011. It's called Genesis Datacom, and they offer security, network cabling, wireless, and low-voltage lighting. And again, prior to that, it was an electrical contractor for a number of years.
But aren't they also going to add more tenants to this? Or is it going to remain that one tenant,
It's just for Datacom,
that one use?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Tony. And if there's no objection, I think while all of these are all planning and development items, I think we can go ahead and add M9 and M10 to the grouped items here at the end. Okay, good. All right, we can move to the separate items now. Item 20 is an ordinance to amend certain sections of the Transportation Code. Mr. Moore, we probably need a report on this or a briefing on it, please.
We've been working with the city attorney's office and our director of fleet services on some recommended changes. I'll ask Tom to go over those.
The changes were instituted or were suggested by the major taxi cab company, Greater Little Rock. What they wanted to do was to deal with the age of a vehicle that could be used as a taxi cab. The current ordinance says that it has to be put into use no more than 4 years after the model year and can only be used for 8 years after the model year. This extends that from 7 years to 10 years. It still has to meet all other requirements and maintenance records, but this just allows slightly older cabs to be used. The second thing is to try to be able to use other electronic devices for calculating customer fare instead of just a taximeter. This was one of those things that was felt to be appropriate to now enable the taxi companies to be able to compete with the transportation companies.
Say that last part again, Tom.
The transportation network companies that are now controlled by the state don't have to have taximeters, and they can use all kinds of ways of determining this. This allows an electronic device to be used as opposed to the other one.
What's the standard in the, all right, I have a question about the other piece of this that you mentioned. What's the standard in the industry on extending the age of these vehicles to 10 years? That sounds a little bit long to me, but, and most of the transportation network companies, of course, are driving pretty new black fancy cars. So I'm just curious if anyone looked to see what the real standard in the industry is in terms of the extended life of the vehicles.
We didn't do that. We understood that had been agreed upon. Mr. Hinton can probably
May I ask
address
Mr.
it.
Hinton to come forward. Mr. Hinton.
Mayor Stotler, Board, we actually did look at what Uber and Lyft actually require as a standard for how old a vehicle can be and how long it actually can stay in service. And what we actually recommended actually is in line with that.
So they allow cars that are 10 years old on the street?
They allow you to, after you start a car in service, which means it can be up to 7 years old, it can stay in service for 10 years, yes.
What about other taxi cab, the more traditional taxi cab companies?
Well, since we didn't have anybody but Yellow here, I didn't look.
Well, I mean, there are others in other cities.
Right, I did not look at them. I looked at who was in, Uber is in competition with the folks here, so we looked to make sure that we wasn't requiring the taxi cab companies not to do something that the other transportation providers are doing here in the city.
If you get a chance maybe to call a few other cities and just kind of see what the age is, I'd be curious to.
Yes, sir.
To see on taxi cabs whether or not 10 years is the going rate.
we will do that and have you an update next week.
Thank you. Director Wyrick, sorry.
Thank you. Tom, this transportation code, does it also include, like, for instance, vans, travel buses, like coaches, like Little Rock Tours would use? And if so, will this ordinance take care of, will it also be applied to those types of, I don't know what, transportation, luxury transportation type vehicles?
Director Wyrick, the transportation code deals with pretty much all ground transportation except bus service within the city that's allowed. The different provisions of the code deal with the different types of transportation. So we have everything from, you might remember, horse and buggy in parts of the river market, to taxis, to limousines, to other services. These changes deal with the taxi cab aspect of it.
Okay, so why would we not include those other types of vehicles, like the coaches and the, I'm not sure, but it seems like Little Rock Tours has got a smaller type bus, maybe. Why would we not apply that to those types of vehicles as well?
The request was made for taxi cabs, and it was in response to the board's suggestion that they come forward with us for things that allow them to compete on an equal basis with the transportation network companies. And my understanding is we hadn't gotten that from the other entities.
Okay, I was approached by one of the entities requesting that that be expanded to 10 years, because if you finance one of those vehicles, you don't get them paid off till they're 10 years old. And so therefore, you know, you can't drive them in the city past 7 years. So can we add that to the transportation code for those types of vehicles?
We can, one of the things, yes. I mean, can we do it by Tuesday? Mr. Hinton indicates we can take a look at it.
Okay.
And if we can't do it by Tuesday, we could still do it and move forward with that. We had not heard that. We had been dealing with the taxi company on this
Okay.
issue.
Well, I'd heard it, I thought I mentioned it to Mr. Moore, that they were interested in expanding the length of time.
And I do remember the conversation, and I think we ended up saying we didn't regulate that, but I will just have to go back and, I remember the conversation, and I realized it wasn't really an issue with us. Now, Mr. Jones was here then, so I just have to go back and look.
Okay, well, if you look into that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, that takes care of ordinance number 20. 21 is, and 22 are ordinances on the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. I think are dealing with Wellspun, is that correct?
Right, these are refunding bonds.
Refunded bonds, yes, okay. And
Mr. Fowler is here if there's any questions, but this is basically to take advantage of interest rates.
And then we have ordinance number 23, dealing with the Stonecrest Apartments, and this is on appeal from the planning, well, let's see, the planning, Mr. Moore, the planning commission approved it, is that
Correct.
right?
Correct.
8-1, and the staff recommends denial. Was there some objector?
No, this is coming before you because it's a PCD, and so it's not an appeal. It's just, but at this point, staff is still consistent with recommending denial based on the fact that we feel like it's encroaching into the neighborhood.
Okay, all right. Okay, we have a public hearing on, oh, I'm sorry, Director Wyrick, did you have a question on that?
Yes.
Go ahead, and then Director Adcock.
You are going to think I'm chatty Cathy tonight, but I'm really not. So this is the apartment complex that came before us a few months back. This is the one where they did not have enough parking for the number of apartments, and they had an adjacent parking lot. It was across the street from where the apartments were. And that was in order to meet the number of parking places to match the number of units of apartments. And so they've come back and they have, I'm doing the presentation, aren't I? They've come back and they have provided an adequate number of parking spaces. And that's where I'm going to quit, because I would like to know if the things that the applicant offered in the planning meeting will be in the record, such as the 24-hour person living in the apartment complex and some other things. So if someone will bring me up to date as to where we are.
Mr. Brzezinski.
I have a couple of questions about the zoning, the site plan as well.
Yeah, Tony's going to do a presentation. Go ahead, Tony.
Director Wyrick, Mayor, Vice Mayor, board members. I think Director Wyrick kind of outlined the issue, but the applicant did amend the application at the Planning Commission meeting to provide for 24-hour on-site management. So that is part of the approval that's before you. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Okay. Can we see the site plan? That's not the one I wanted to see. It's the one that, I guess it's probably the zoning map. Okay, that one. Okay, you've got Winston Drive and you've got Herrick Lane, and there are two houses, one on Winston and one on Herrick Lane. Did the applicant buy both of those houses in order to increase his parking?
Director Wyrick, the one on Winston, I think, has been purchased, and the one on Herrick Lane is either under contract or also has been purchased.
Okay, and so those will be torn down, and that's where he's getting additional parking.
Yes, those
Okay.
areas. Now, I think the one on Winston has already been removed.
Okay. So the location across the street, that's not even in the picture now, that where they were going to do the off-site parking, that's not even in the picture.
No, that's not part of the application or the site plan. It's
Okay.
just that area that's outlined in red.
Okay. Where this new parking is going to be placed across the back, he's removing both of those houses. How close is that to the nearest residence?
The one on Herrick, there's a 9-foot landscape buffer. So, and those, the ones on that side of the development are, they're not head-in into the north, what would be the north property line. They're on the interior, whereas the ones on the east side, closer to Winston, those are head-in to the residences further to the north.
Okay. And how close?
I'm not sure the dimension or a distance.
But you've got like I guess you've got the fence line and then you've got landscaping, or do you have landscaping and then a fence?
No, Director Wyrick, it'd be the property is fenced, so there'd be the fence and then the landscape areas.
Okay. And when you're saying head in, you're saying when they pull in to park, they're facing that house or those houses with headlights.
Or the house
Backing
or the
in.
rear yard area.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so the staff is denying this application. So what were your reasons for the denial?
We're concerned about that this by increasing the parking, you're further encroaching into the residential neighborhood, and that potentially that could have a negative impact on that neighborhood.
Okay. Did they give a new site, new pictures of what the site's going to look like, the completed apartments? I know they're revamping some and making them 3-bedroom and keeping some 1-bedroom. Was there a change in the design on the outside of the apartments?
Director Wyrick, they did, at the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant did show some renderings. And what they, again, as you mentioned, there'd be 1 unit or 1 bedroom and 3 bedrooms, but they propose to paint it and then to add a pitch roof to change the appearance of the buildings.
And the entrance to it is off of Winston Drive. They've got one in, they have a single entrance and exit.
There are 2 entrances off of Winston and then exit onto Herrick Lane.
Okay, and it is gated still.
Yes.
Okay, 24-hour security. Okay, all right, thank you.
Is there, Tony, is there any occupancy in these buildings now?
No.
Mayor, no.
So what, I'm just curious, I mean, if the staff recommendation is adopted, these things stay vacant? I mean, what kind of an impact is that gonna have on those homes adjacent to it?
It's been vacant for quite a while.
I mean, it seems to me that, you've got those existing buildings there. I mean, are we gonna wait till they get so dilapidated that they have to be torn down? I mean, that's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer that. I guess we'll vote on that later, but it seems to me, so they're completely vacant now, right?
Yes, they lost their nonconformity
I
because
understand.
they were vacant for a longer period of time than is allowed by the ordinance.
They were closed down by the city and boarded up.
I know. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Okay, I wasn't sure you knew that.
I knew that. I just wanted it on the record. Thank you.
Okay.
That's why I was trying to figure out the staff recommendation since they're currently vacant.
Okay.
Director Adcock.
Yes, Mayor, the neighborhood wants them left vacant because they do not want them open back up and then the chance of it turning the way it was before. Tony? We've heard all kinds of promises on these. BJ mentioned the 1-bedroom to 3 bedrooms. We've heard that the laundromat is going to be inside and no longer outside, and they're promising a whole bunch of stuff, but how much of what they've promised is part of their application and is on the record?
Director Adcock, all that is part of the plan development. It's part of the file. So if this is approved, that's what will have to be done.
Would you please read, because lots of people watch this, would you please read what they have promised will be done if this was approved? Because I'm like staff, I don't like the idea of them going back into that neighborhood further, particularly with drives going in and out of the area of that neighborhood.
Okay, there will be a total of 54 units. 48 will be 1-bedroom, 6 will be 3-bedroom, and then within the existing buildings, there'll be an office, custodial office, and the laundry facility. The development will be gated and fenced to limit access to the site. The site plan has the 81 parking spaces, which meets the ordinance requirement.
That is if they tear down both of those houses and put parking lots in.
Yes, and I think the one house on Winston has been removed. And then, as has been stated earlier, they did amend the application to provide that 24-hour on-site management.
Who was notified of this on your neighborhood associations?
I thought I just saw it. Southwest Little Rock United for Progress and the Town and Country Neighborhood Association.
West Baseline was not notified,
No,
just Town and Country?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wyrick?
I have one more question. When I looked at the write-up from the Planning Commission actions, there was a statement regarding they were going to try to have senior citizens in this complex. How far did that go?
Director Wyrick, I don't think it's not an age-restricted development.
Okay. Okay, so just because they said they were leaning toward having senior citizens, there's nothing binding or anything the city could monitor in that regard?
No, I don't think that's what's being presented.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, or perhaps me, Tom does. I mean, where on the pendulum of condemnation are these properties?
It's, if I may, I don't think the property was declared unsafe vacant by the Department of Housing and Neighborhood Programs,
Right.
but I don't think it ever got to the board for condemnation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we can now move into the other areas. We have a public hearing on right-of-way, alley right-of-way abandonment, and I guess our financial reports for September. Is that right?
Correct. And Mayor, we were prepared to do those today. We need to get September at least out of the way.
But do that today?
Yes,
Okay,
sir. And
very good.
before Sarah comes up, also on Friday, the CYF is meeting tomorrow to recommend contracts with our prevention, intervention, and reentry program. So just from a timing standpoint, they don't meet till tomorrow. That's why we don't have those recommendations. But I would like to add those if I'm comfortable with moving forward, I might have those as a modification on Friday. Just FYI.
Director Adcock?
Mr. Moore, when will we get copies of those?
So they're meeting tomorrow. I'll review them Thursday, and if they're ready to go, they'll be out Friday.
In our ponies?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I also would like to know how these bid proposals different since we have the master youth plan than they have been in the past.
Sure. Well, the main difference was just what we requested. We went through working with Sarah's department, our purchasing director, to ensure that the valuation mechanism was requested. So all of those will be a part of the valuation, but we'll have that for you.
Thank you.
Bruce, a lot of these are renewals, I take it. Is that correct?
To be honest, Mayor, I haven't seen the list, but I will tell you, and from my conversation with Dana, we had some new organizations that had applied, so that's a good thing.
Well, I just, in that context, if there were some renewals, I thought if we had any of the data that had been collected previously by our community programs department on how they had performed, I think that would be helpful information for us to have as part of our review.
And past performance is actually part of the review going forward, too. That's a new mechanism also.
Okay.
Sarah?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. This is the September financial report, which reflects revenues that were collected through November for September activities, and that's why it's a little bit later getting to you. As we look at the first slide of revenues, you'll see that through the end of September, we had collected 78.49% of our annual budget. 9/12 of the year would be 75%, and this compares to just slightly more than that a year ago at 78.58%. On the next slide, you'll see the dollar amount of the revenues. We had collected $148,979,000 of our revenues. The amended budget is $142,351,442, and this compares to $148,448,219 the same period a year ago. So while it appears that we're $6.6 million above the amended budget, but that is primarily due to the timing of revenue collections, which you'll see on the next slide, we're only $530,000 higher than the same period last year. So on the next slide, you see, and again, I mentioned this includes collections through November for September revenues, and so our property tax revenues are virtually complete for the year with the exception of some of the homestead payments and things that trickle in the last part of the year. But this does include an accrual for the November receipt, which is the big property tax receipt of the year. Our sales tax revenues are typically heavier in the fourth quarter. We'll talk about that in detail in a moment. Licenses and permits, approximately $6.6 million of the license number is associated with business licenses, and those are all collected in the first part of the year, in the January timeframe. The other permits are primarily planning permits that are more ratable throughout the year, but approximately 99% of the annual budget had been collected through the end of September. Our intergovernmental revenues are collected in their entirety in July, so that number will not change through the remainder of the year. So those are the three big categories, property taxes, licenses and permits, and intergovernmental, that are driving that $6.6 million favorable variance, totally due to timing. We are in line with our amended budget that we adopted. On the next slide, you see the comparison to the same period a year ago. Again, we've talked prior that our property tax excess commissions that are typically collected in February each year and accrued back to the previous year were not received until March in 2016. So because of that, under the modified accrual basis of accounting, they had to be included in the 2016 revenues. So that's a one-time increase in revenues of about $600,000 that's included in 2016 that would have traditionally been included in the previous year. So this year, we're anticipating, 2 rounds of the excess commissions will drop back to 1 year next year. So again, while this is a favorable variance, it was included in our amended budget. It's anticipated. On the next slide, we'll look at our sales tax. Before you get too excited, I do want to let you know, while we did have a very favorable month with our November collection of September revenues, in December, this favorable variance was washed back out, and we are now back in line with our amended budget. So don't get too excited. But we did have a nice month. We were 7.47% increase for the city portion of the sales tax in comparison to the same period a year ago in the month of September. The county portion of the sales tax, the city's share of the county penny, was 4.35% higher, and so the blended result was 5.98% higher than the same period a year ago. Year-to-date through the end of September, we were 0.61% above our amended budget and just under 0.5% above the same period a year ago. Again, we'll look at the next slide. I'll go on that in a moment. So this is just the blended, instead of showing you the individual component of the city sales tax, the county piece, and the turnback, this is just the blended number, which was 5.98% higher than the same period a year ago. And this would indicate that the 12-month running cumulative total is 1.51% higher than the previous 12-month period. On the next slide, you'll see we had adopted our amended budget, and so all of the previous variances for the year were moved to the actual numbers in our amended budget. This month, which was collected in November for September sales, was $441,000 above budget. Our December collections, which I'll be showing you probably at our next agenda meeting, were approximately $400,000 below the same period a year ago. We're slightly above our amended budget, but not much. And year-to-date, again, you see that we are 0.61% above the amended budget, 0.44% above the same period a year ago, and the running 12 months, 1.51% growth. The next slide highlights just the new 1 cent sales tax divided into the 5/8 cent portion for operations and the 3/8 cent portion for capital projects. Year-to-date, we've collected $13.5 million towards those capital projects, $22.5 million towards the operations, and so year-to-date, $36 million, which compares to $35,749,000 from the same period a year ago, which is just under 1% growth. On the next slide, you'll see our electric franchise fees. Through September, the year-to-date revenues are approximately $617,000 below the same period a year ago, but they are in line with our amended budget that we adopted. They're approximately 5.6% lower than prior year revenues. The next slide is our gas franchise fees. And the usage is down just under 20% year-to-date. The revenues are down 28% compared to the same period a year ago. And again, that's a reflection of the low cost of natural gas and the very mild weather that we've experienced in the last year. Again, while revenues are $757,000 below the same period a year ago, they are in line with our amended budget. On the next slide, we'll talk about our general fund expenditures. We had expended 73.68% of our annual budget. Again, 9/12 is 75%, and the same period a year ago, we had expended 71.9% of the annual budget. On the next slide, we'll look at the dollars, and we had expended $138,717,000. Against a budget of $141,206,795. Expenditures are approximately a little less than $2.5 million below budget and approximately $6.4 million above the same period a year ago. And we'll show you the variances by department on the next slide. So here you'll see we have favorable variances in the majority of the departments. From general administration, the favorable variance is primarily due to the timing of our actuarially determined pension and OPEB contributions that are paid later in the year. And the variance is really primarily due to the timing of our debt service payments. We have short-term notes that were taken out to accelerate 3/8 cent capital projects and other projects, and so the timing of those note payments, they're all in accordance with budget. It's just the timing of when those payments come due is creating that variance. Our golf operations is over budget through the end of September. Part of that is due to the timing of expenses in the heavy season of the year. But also with the closure of War Memorial for replacement of the greens, there were more expenditures with land maintenance and some of those things as well during the year, and some overtime cost. There's also some vacation and sick payouts of some long-term golf employees that's included in that number. And when we recorded our budget amendment, we'll offset some of those. We accrue that cost in the general government division and then reallocate it to the actual department where the employee retired, and so that loss will decrease somewhat. In the zoo, there are unfavorable variances primarily due to the timing of expenses. Personnel cost, though, was $102,000 above budget. And again, that is in line with the zoo's busy season. Their revenues have a favorable variance as well of approximately $238,000 that's offsetting the impact of the negative variance there in personnel. The fire department has a negative variance, and approximately Actually, there's an offsetting favorable variance included in there due to the timing of contributions to the closed fire pension plan that coincides with property tax receipts. So there's actually a larger negative variance there in personnel cost associated with overtime and the timing of clothing and EMT allowances. I believe that our vacancy savings is going to be sufficient, that it's going to offset that overage by the end of the year. The police department has a very large favorable variance of $2.1 million. Again, approximately $1.5 million of that is due to the timing of the contributions to the closed police pension fund, which in this case, since they've merged with LOTFI bills us a stated rate of payroll per pay period that we contribute, but then we collect dedicated revenues from the dedicated property tax levy, the $500,000 sales tax contribution, 10% of fines and fees. We collect all that, we compare that to what LOTFI has billed us as a percentage of revenue, and we make a lump sum contribution at the end of the year to pay down that unfunded liability. And so in December, we contributed an additional $2.2 million generated from those dedicated revenues to help pay down that liability. So that's why you see that favorable variance there. We anticipated those revenues, they're budgeted, they're just not distributed until the end of the year.
So Sarah, you mentioned that $1.5 million of that was for the closed pension fund. What about the rest of it?
It's primarily due to excess vacancy savings in the police department. And then you see the negative on vacancy savings on that last line, but that's because it has not yet been allocated to the departments. We are on track to achieve our amended vacancy savings goal. And on the next slide, you'll see that with our amended budget, we moved that bar to $7,250,000. Through the end of September, we had achieved $6 million in vacancy savings. There were 151 budgeted positions that were unfilled in the general fund. And at that time, it included 54 police officers and 4 higher level uniform positions. On our vacation sick payouts, the amended budget accrual was $1,350,000. We had expended just under $1.2 million for retiring employees, their vacation and sick payouts. And then on the next slide, you see finally the trend in our vacant positions. And that completes the September financial report.
You just turned yourself off. Director Campiris, you're recognized, please.
Well, Sarah, you know, I wouldn't take your job for the world. I just was sent a note saying the National Conference of State Legislators estimated that Arkansas lost over $113 million in uncollectible sales tax for internet sales in 2012. Now, I know it's not less than that in 13 or 14 or 15 or 16. And our hope that something would happen in the lame duck session looks like nothing's going to happen. And we have sent our congressman a letter saying, please come and explain this to us. And at least I've never heard that they've acknowledged our letter.
Director Campiris, I don't know the answer to that, but I will let you know that one of the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeals has just upheld a statute in a sister state that does tap into internet sales tax receipts. I haven't had the chance to sit down and compare that in detail with the Arkansas statute, but from my reading of the opinion, there may be some hope that there are some things we can do on the local level.
Well, and I think we need to do it locally, and we need to be absolutely aggressive about it. And it really, really, really upsets me that we send a letter to our senators and representatives and we hear no reply. I mean, basically is that right, Bruce and Mark? Have y'all heard anything?
Yeah, well, and I mean, they you know, there was some hope it was going to happen in this,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the letter
Right.
that asked them to come and talk with us about this issue. We've got a 0.9% increase on an adjusted budget. Is that right, Sarah? So basically, we have no increase in sales tax. We have a new mall going in, we have new places going in, we have all sorts of new opportunities, which only can mean to me that we are having more and more and more people who don't go to the store. If you want to take a very poor example of how you know people aren't going to the store, the parking lot at my office, the first year the mall opened next door to it, patients couldn't get into the parking lot. And now there's no problem. I mean, this Christmas season, there was no problem. I mean, people were going in and out. We're going to be in real problem. And I know I keep saying this, and I know I sound like a broken record, but it really upsets me that we're not taking a more aggressive stance. It really, really upsets me that our two senators and our representative won't come stand right there and tell people in Pulaski County why they want to let us go broke. The legislature is in session. Why we're not pushing something at the legislature right now to do something about this? I mean, as next year when Bruce comes to us and Mark comes to us with a contract, and we have budget adjustments for all the people that need budget adjustments and for pay increases, and you have half of your money coming in from sales tax, we're not going to be able to do it. We're going to get in the same quandary we did when we had the sales tax increase, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago? 4 years ago. We're getting into that same problem. Our sister city in North Little Rock borrowed from reserves to make up the money. We're in a real crisis, and no one is, I don't know what we can do about it, but if we don't start making people in our legislature understand, and if we don't make our two senators and our representative understand what they're doing to us, we're going to be laying off people, decreasing services, and then people are going to be saying you're not good fiduciaries of the money we're up here. And you can't be a good fiduciary if you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting. And I mean, I'm open to any suggestion anybody has on how we get people understanding the quagmire and the problem we're having going forward. And I think we need to at least send our representative and our two senators another note saying our sales tax is 0.5 increase for the year. We're getting into having some real problems. Please come talk with us about this. And, you know, they're going to, we need to see if there's anything we can do in the legislature, if our lobbyists can do anything. I don't know if anybody at the state capitol, and you may know, Kathy, have any idea about what's happening on this. But, you know, I'm going to bring it up every week until we start doing something, or until we just finally say we're going to let this city go. And we're never going to be what Mark wants us to be in the next great American city if we don't have any money to do it. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You don't have deteriorating roads, deteriorating services. You can't pay your employees. And then we're going to say we're going to be a great American city. It doesn't work. And if you just look at those numbers for 2012 and you extrapolate what it is now, there is no telling how much money we're losing. So 1 of 11, me, I'm going to keep beating this drum until we start figuring out something to do, or we just need to say, let's close shop and move on, spend our reserves till we're done, and then the next group can come in here and try to figure out how to clean up the mess. But that's not what we were hired on to do. It's not what I was hired on to do. It's to watch the ship go down by not doing the right thing.
Director Webb, Vice Mayor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to add a little bit to what Dean said, we all signed that letter not too long ago, and I think we should re-extend the invitation. And I wonder if, is anything, would there be like a resolution or anything at the municipal league?
Well, there is resolutions at the municipal league. I can tell you every state league in the country, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, NACO, every single national, the big 7 national organizations, all are singing the same song out of the same hymnal, and Congress is not moving on it. So, the question that you ask is, what can a city do independently of anyone else? And Mr. Carpenter, I think if there may be some legal action that we can take that might be something we can do independent of that, and there are some businesses now that are paying the local sales tax. Walmart, Amazon, I believe are both paying, and there are some individuals like that because of the nexus question. The case law on this issue is that you can't require that tax to be collected unless there's a nexus to the state. I think Amazon is elected to say that there are so many nexuses that they have that they can do that, that they're collecting it. It would be helpful if we could get Tom an update on that in terms of actually who's paying and who's not paying. And then kind of an update on this case law, because it may be that the courts are going to be the only way to get this solved. The legislation in Congress right now is basically one that is directed toward the fundamental question is who pays, who's paying the tax? Is the seller? Is the purchaser paying the tax? And is it being collected, or is it going to be where the actual property is sold from? And if that's the case, that's not going to help us a bit. And so the chair of the committee is of that mind. And so if that ever gets out of the committee, that's not what anybody wants. So again, the fundamental issue is whether or not the city can do anything independently of the state or of the federal government. There you are.
If there is a problem in Doris's ward or Kathy's ward, and one of the people want you and Bruce to come out there and look and see what the problem is, then you go out and look and see how we can resolve it. Now, we may not be able to resolve it. There may be some person up there in Washington that thinks that the point of sale ought to be giving it to somebody in New York City when someone in Little Rock's buying it. That's another issue to fight. But the thing that really upsets me is you ask people to do the same thing that the 11 of us are asked every day to do, and that is to respond to something that's happening in our city and come and recognize the problem, whether you can do something about it or not. We have asked the Municipal League to help us. We've sent a letter to our 2 senators and representative, and to my knowledge, they've never acknowledged the receipt of the letter, when they were going to come, or doodly squat about it. And it's a little bit upsetting to be the capital city and the largest city in this state, and to have 3 people that are supposed to be representing us and not even be able to have a dialogue with them. That's nuts. That is honestly nuts. It makes us look like fools. It makes them look like something else, but it makes us look like fools that we can't even get the people who represent us to come talk to us. I mean, how long would you be reelected or Bruce have his job if you just said, Joan, I know you've got this problem out in Southwest Little Rock, but I've got too much to do. I'll check on it some other time. I mean, none of us would be up here, nor should we be up here. And to allow people not to do something and not to do the right thing is crazy. Now, I don't know how to get their attention. I don't know if you should call them. I don't know if someone should say you've got this crazy ranting idiot down here who's making a fool of himself, and I'll be glad to be that person. But someone needs to get someone's attention to come talk to us. We represent 200,000 people, and we're gonna lose this city if we don't start doing something.
I'll put in a call to all of the individuals. As I said, this is an act of Congress that is trying to get through. We've lost, frankly, by virtue of the last election, we lost support in our state delegation on this issue. But we can get them. I'll make a phone call and see whether they're willing to come down here personally and talk.
When they're willing to come.
All right, Director Adcock.
Well, the legislature started this week, and I do not believe that we have seen anything to tell us what bills we've got out there that our staff is working on. A few months ago, you presented it to us. I think it was like September, but we have nothing recently. Also, I believe you was going to hire a lobbyist to assist Emily, and has that been done, and who is it? And third, we used to invite the Little Rock Pulaski County delegation to come to lunch. We used to invite them to come to breakfast and everything. In the last couple of years, we haven't done anything to build a relationship with them.
Well, that's not accurate, Director Adcock, with all due respect. First of all, the ethics laws that have changed do not allow us to invite the Pulaski County delegation or the Little Rock members of the delegation to a breakfast. They can't accept that. The only entities that can accept it is the entire General Assembly or a committee, an established committee of the state legislature. So that's on the issue of an invite to a breakfast or a luncheon or something like that. As it relates to the issue of working with that delegation, last time we met weekly with our delegation to the extent that they would attend and show up. And several did, and we'd meet down in the Capitol on a particular day. Everybody would buy their own coffee, their own breakfast, and we'd sit there and talk about issues. So I know that Emily and I have talked about that, and I'm sure Bruce has talked about the fact that we're going to be working with our delegation to do that again. And certainly every member of the board will be advised on what that day is and what time of the morning it is, and
I don't remember
be
ever
happy to
getting-
have everybody attend.
I don't remember ever getting any of those invitations, go out to the Capitol and visit with them. I guess I must have been absent. But Ms. Moore, I would like to know what kind of relationship we can build with these people that we want to do things for us, if it's on the sales tax, if it's on other issues. I also would like to know what bills we have out there that Little Rock is asking to have passed.
Sure, Director Adcock. As you stated, the session started yesterday. The board endorsed a series of bills, and what I normally do is on our Friday, Pony updates you on those. And as you would remember, the board also passed a resolution late last year hiring Jeff Hoggart as our lobbyist. So Jeff's working with us again. And I'll provide those weekly updates on the legislative
Is he a
items.
local person?
He actually, I think his practice is out of town, but has a lot of familiarity with the city and the legislature.
Does he live in Little Rock?
He does not.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on what Director Adcock said, just because they can't have lunch or breakfast doesn't mean we can't all get together. And we had a meeting last night, a neighborhood association meeting. We had representatives there. It was during the football game, and we had about 35 people there, and we were talking about what the neighborhood association was going to do in terms of working with legislators on landlord-tenant bill that we were all very interested in, and Director Adcock's been interested in that for decades. And I think we're really missing the boat by not jumping on this immediately.
All right, is any other, Director Adcock?
Mr. Moore, if they're looking at anything to do with landlord bills, I would like to be informed of when that's going to happen.
And that's what we do. We have, Emily leads our legislative team. It's made up of all representatives from all of the departments. We have a bill tracking system that we're able to look at major categories that impact cities and get those out to our department. So we'll keep the board informed of, as I've done in the past, anything, not only our package, but anything that we feel like impacts Little Rock or impacts cities.
I'm glad that the city department is and everything, but I would like for this board to have a closer relationship with the legislature.
And as I think Vice Mayor said, you're right. We used to have an event with the Convention Bureau that we invited all of the General Assembly, and the rules have just changed in so many ways. But I think it is important to have those relationships with our Little Rock and our Pulaski County legislators.
Let me ask you this. Is it the food that we can't provide? Can we have meetings with them? Can we invite them to an afternoon meeting and not provide any food?
You can.
I think we might want to look at something like that.
And let me just say, and I think the Vice Mayor and Mayor, it is very difficult to get all of them together. Even on these regular scheduled meetings, once they get set, we're always happy to have all of them. It's always very difficult to have all of them. So asking for an additional meeting, we don't mind asking, but it probably would be very difficult.
Well, let's take what we can get.
I agree.
All right, very good. If there's nothing else to come before us, we're finished. Thank you.